City Clerk, are we ready to begin?
Yes, we are.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and we're going to call the regular scheduled meeting of the San Bruno City Council of March 22nd of 2022 to order. And if I may please have a roll call.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Councilmember Salazar?
Here.
Vice Mayor Mason is in the attendee side, so she will be here shortly, and Mayor Medina.
Here. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I didn't ask this up. There is our Vice Mayor. Councilmember Medina, would you be so kind as to lead us in the pledge this evening? And sorry for the short notice.
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Item number 4, public comments for items not on the agenda. We are going to begin. Members public will have up to 3 minutes. It is council policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation or action where appropriate. Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon items not agendized pursuant to state law. We do have a 7:10 public hearing. So if we get close to that, we will pause public hearing and reconvene that after public hearing. So City Clerk, if you could bring in the speakers.
The first speaker is Joe Yankee.
Joe Yank. Mr. Mayor and council members, this will be short. Last year, they repaved the... Last year, they repaved Crystal Springs Avenue because of a sewer line replacement or a storm drain. I don't know which. And so the street was repaved. I don't know what kind of a warranty you got, but there's a big gaping piece of pavement missing on Crystal Springs between Elm and Acacia. That's all. Bye.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Bruno Mershon. Bernal Mershon, I apologize.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I will be short. I have 3 things. The first is the San Bruno Senior Center, which is having a problem getting lunches for all the residents of San Bruno. Sometimes we come in and lunches have been sold out. Now, I have been told that they're working on this, so I just want to say that there is interest in fixing this problem so that citizens of San Bruno are fed, and then after that, anyone else can come in and buy their lunches. The second thing I have is I know that they're starting to pave the area and stripe the area of the senior center, and we've been told that we can park below. I don't know if the council has thought about a tram that would come from the parking below to bring you up to the doors of the senior center, and maybe you could have times so that people would know when they can park and when they could come on up to the center. The third area I have is, volunteers run the center, basically, and they are the diamonds of the whole community. But there is a woman there who I have heard her on a number of occasions speaking to volunteers. I believe she's the supervisor or the superintendent. I'm not positive, but she has just yelling, disrespectful, inappropriate, and it is very, very sad because we want to keep our volunteers. They don't have to be there if they don't want to. On a second thought, with the same person, she spoke on stage to the group about the paving. People were talking in the audience, And she said, shut up, just shut up, which I thought that is inappropriate, disrespectful, and it's also elder abuse. And I would hope that you would look into it. Maybe we could contact Aging and Adult Services to bring in some classes or something for her so she could interact with people on a more pleasant basis. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments and your time as well. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Paul Wipenski.
Good evening. I got two things. One, I wasn't able to attend the earlier meeting, but I'm against ranked choice. I think you either win or you lose. And the second thing I have is back in May of last year, the council essentially wrote a blank check for Centennial Plaza work. When will we find out how much money we spent on that project? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Jeremy Sarnecki.
Hello, Council. So I would just like to follow up a letter that I sent to Council. I made a public comment. And to follow up with that, I would like to announce I am trying to organize an Earth Day event in San Bruno Park. That would be April 23rd, Saturday. Earth Day will be held on Friday, April 22nd. Maybe we can call it Survival Day, I don't know yet. But that is going to be in the short-term plans of mine. So if you could take a look at that public comment, I would be most pleased. I sent it to Michael Salazar, who is our alternate director at PCE, the Power Resources Director at PCE, and our State Senator, Josh Becker. Great. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Next speaker, please.
There are no other hands raised.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we are going to move into our public hearing, which is to begin at 7:10, but we are I think close, and as we read it and get prepared, I think we will be making that time on time as we have in the past. This is under public hearings. Item A, hold the sixth public hearing, waive the second reading, and adopt an ordinance to adopt a district map and amend Municipal Code Chapter 2.32.010, General Municipal Elections. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and ask City Hall if we wanted to begin.
Mr. Mayor, we will get ready to pull up the slide presentation and begin. The first presentation will start by Kristen Parks, our demographic consultant from NDC. However, we want to wait to open the public hearing until 7:10. My clock shows 7:08. I know for members of the public that have not attended our other public hearings, there may be a question of why we are waiting. We are waiting because state law mandates that these public hearings begin at a time certain that is on the posted agenda. And so that is 7:10. We're 1 minute away. I'm wasting all the time I can waste. But at 7:10, please open the public hearing.
Thank you for that explanation. This is a state, city manager indicated, and we have been very good and have had all those hearings starting promptly at 7:10. So we will do just that. And we have just a little bit. I'm going to ask the council and staff and our presenters, please stand by as we begin right at 7:10. I'm showing the hour of 7:10, unless my clock is fast or slow. And so with that, I would ask if we can begin.
Ms. Parks, the presentation is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kristen Parks with National Demographics Corporation, and I am going to be driving the slide deck this evening. I'm also joined by Jennifer Nentwig from Tri-Peppy Smith. So, Council, you have seen a lot of this before, but we want to make sure that everyone who's joining us from the public this evening gets a little bit of the background to understand why the city of San Bruno is transitioning to district-based elections. We're also going to get an update on the outreach and community engagement that has been conducted as part of this process. And finally, we will be reviewing the preferred map and the election sequence. So I'm going to start by giving a quick background. So currently, in the city of San Bruno, both the mayor and the council members are elected at large. What that means is that every voter in the city has the opportunity to elect the mayor and every council member. Now, there is a state law called California Voting Rights Act that encourages cities to switch from at-large elections to by-district elections. In a by-district election system, voters will continue to be able to elect the mayor, every voter in the city, but each district will elect one council member, and only voters within that district will have the opportunity to vote for their one council member. In 2020, the city of San Bruno proactively made the decision to make the transition to by-district elections. And this decision was made in the context of several other cities around the state and the county being faced with lawsuits that were forcing the change to by-district elections. So San Bruno avoided the lawsuit route by choosing to make the transition voluntarily. So as I mentioned, all the voters in the city will continue to have the opportunity to elect the mayor at large, but the 4 council members will be elected only by voters within their district. So in order to change either the number of council members or the direct election of the mayor, voter approval is required, and that is because of a proposition from the 1970s that put that governing structure in place for San Bruno. So we have held 5 public hearings. This evening is the 6th, and the city has gone above and beyond because only 4 public hearings are required, or 5 public hearings are required by law. The city is holding 6 and also held 2 community workshops. And once we get this map adopted, then we will be in compliance with the April 15th deadline that's in place so that the county registrar of voters has all of the information necessary for the November election. So I'm going to pass it over now to Jennifer Nentwig from Tri-Peppy Smith to give you some information on the outreach and public engagement.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen. And as has been mentioned, my name is Jen Nentwig. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you again this evening and share another update with you at this 6th public hearing. As Kristen mentioned, I'm with Tri-Peppy Smith, the outreach and engagement firm that has really been supporting the city in your communications about this important effort. So we can move right on along to the next slide. And one more. So in the next few slides, you can see the various types of media that we have employed as part of these outreach and engagement efforts. But I want to highlight that it's been through a variety of media and a variety of languages. And as Kristen mentioned, the city really has gone above and beyond in that process. We've made a point in working with the city to reach out via a variety of different platforms, as you can see here on this slide, including digital communications, print materials that we'll get into later, and in-person outreach to really try to reach all of your different community members. We've also worked with the city to communicate in various languages, including Spanish as well as Chinese. Traditional materials or translated materials and or interpreters have been provided for outreach elements such as the website, social media, flyers, the citywide mailer that I'll describe on a following slide, as well as the virtual community workshop. And I won't read through all of these items in this slide that describes the digital outreach, but one important area is the website that is districtingsanbruno.org, where people can find all the information about the process, including background information, a schedule of all your hearings and workshops, including recordings where people can find information if they want to go back and reference it, as well as FAQs. And it's also important to highlight that social media has been distributed about weekly throughout the entire process. So that has been a recurring source of information for community members. And there on the slide, you can see an example of the type of information that has gone out via social media. So we'll move on to the next slide. So in addition to the digital outreach I described, we have, of course, helped the city distribute print material. And this is for folks who may not necessarily spend a lot of time online, may not feel comfortable getting their information electronically. We still want to make sure that there is outreach to those folks. So there have been flyers distributed throughout the process, your required public notices, press releases sent to print media, including those that have been picked up by the Daily Journal a couple of times. And then an important area to highlight is a citywide mailer, and that's what you see here on this slide. It was distributed to all postal customers across the city in February to notify them of the process and to really encourage people to take a look at draft maps and provide their feedback. And we can move on to the next slide. In addition to digital and print outreach, we've also had some in-person opportunities for people to get information. And that has included the 2 workshops that we've talked about, a kiosk in the Chanfran Mall, various engagements at city associations, and a marquee that you can see there on the slide at El Camino Real and San Mateo Ave, really just letting people know about the process and including that URL. So these past few slides have really just highlighted all the different types of ways that the city has communicated this information to give people that heads up and to encourage participation. So we can move on to the next slide. As we are here in this process, we do want to encourage people to continue to engage. As I mentioned, that website remains up. It's a great resource for information if anyone is curious and wanting to learn more. And then you can, of course, always contact the districting team via that phone number and the email address listed there. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kristen Parks to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. All right, so this is the third and final part of our presentation. I am going to show you the map selected by council, describe which districts will be holding elections in 2022, which will be holding elections in 2024, and also review the legal requirements that the map is required to comply with. So first we have federal law, and from the federal government we have 3 requirements for our district maps. First is that districts are equal population, and it doesn't mean exactly equal. There is a permissible total deviation, which is the difference in population size from the largest district to the smallest district. So up to 10% is permitted. We also must comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. We cannot draw any districts based solely on race. That would violate the ban on racial gerrymandering. We also must comply with California state law, which gives us a 4-item list of criteria in order of importance. And so we need to consider all 4 of these items in this order. First, all districts must be contiguous. Second, and this is the area where a lot of discussion occurs and has occurred throughout this process with members of the public, is to draw districts that minimize the division of neighborhoods and communities of interest within the city. Communities of interest are defined as geographically concentrated populations that share common interests and benefit from being kept in one single council district as opposed to being divided into multiple council districts. So to the extent possible, that is the goal, to minimize the divisions. Third, to create easily identifiable boundaries. And fourth, to maintain compactness. Compactness is something you can often see by looking at the shape of a district. You want to make sure that that district doesn't look like it's avoiding taking in a certain area and going farther away to take in another area. So these are all things to keep in mind that we have been talking about as we have reviewed all of the maps that have been submitted throughout this process, of which there were many. So 30 maps were submitted by members of the public. This is not necessarily 30 different individuals, but some individuals submitted multiple maps. And of these 30 public maps, 16 of them met the two most basic requirements, the federal population equality requirement and the contiguity requirement under state law. So of those public maps, a little more than half were legally compliant at the baseline. And then your consultant team just added 3 additional maps to the mix just to make sure that all kinds of different options were on the table. And as those who've been following this process know, at the last public hearing, council identified their preferred map, and this map was drawn and submitted by a member of the public anonymously, and this map is public map 104. And you can see here on the screen that the 4 districts here follow major roads as boundaries. You can see the boundary between District 1 and 2 at Sneath. You can see the freeways, the 280 and 380, forming a boundary between District 2 and 3, and then going up north on El Camino. And then you also see the boundary between District 3 and 4 being El Camino up to San Bruno Ave, and then over to what I believe is, well, I'm not going to say the wrong name of the street, but it's at the tracks there on the other side of Tanforan. Council also selected an election sequence for this map, meaning that for the 2022 election, which is happening on November 8th, Districts 1 and 4 will hold elections. What that means is that Districts 2 and 3 will hold their first by-district elections in 2024. Again, no current members of council have any changes to their terms as a result of this transition, and council members remain at large until they are elected in a by-district election. So you can think of this as a rollout of the by-district system. So the first 2 districts that will hold by-district elections do that this year, and then the remaining 2 in 2024. So while you see on the screen very clearly the boundary lines, I also want to show you a little bit of the demographics here. What you see is information from the 2020 census as well as the American Community Survey. And highlighted in green, I'm showing the total deviation for Public 104, which is just under 9%, and that is compliant with the federal equal population rule, which says that that total deviation must be under 10%. So this is a legally compliant map in that way. And you can see the population of each district at the very top line. You can see the racial and ethnic breakdown. And then you can also see the breakdown of citizens by voting age. And so it's worth pointing out in this particular map that District 4 is a majority Hispanic or Latino district by total population. But when you look at citizen voting age population, it's 40% Hispanic or Latino. What that means to me is very likely in 10 years, that could be a majority Latino or Hispanic district by citizen voting age population as well. And then also pointing out that District 1, while it's not a majority Asian American district by population, at 47%, it's again very close and perhaps in 10 years will be. And the citizen voting age population for District 1 is 45% Asian Pacific Islander. So these are some of the stats here. You can also see the language, education, housing stats, and there's even more statistics on the website if you pull up the demographic report. So with that, we will conclude our presentation. Encourage all members of the public again to visit districtingsanbruno.org. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. And at this time, I'll ask colleagues if they have any questions on the presentation. Then we will go to the public for the public hearing, bring it back to City Council for further discussion and or action. Currently, any questions on the presentation at the time? Seeing none. Vice Mayor Mason.
Just a clarification, what is the significance of tonight's meeting versus the April 6th meeting?
Would the city manager like to answer that question?
City manager or city attorney?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
So on the last couple of presentations when I was reviewing, there's an April 6th meeting date, and I was under the impression that a decision's being made tonight. And so I just wanted to understand what the April meeting date was in the timeline of the PowerPoint that we've been provided.
I think the city manager is coming on and hopefully can explain.
Yeah.
City manager.
Yes. So April 6th was a tentative date for the second reading if we elongated the process. And so there, at this point, is not a April 6th meeting scheduled for the second reading. The first reading was at the last City Council meeting, and this is the second reading. So this would be the conclusion of the process and confirming the selection of map 104. There will be another action that the City Council needs to take to formally, with regard to ballot measures, and then I believe as a part of that action that is scheduled for July 12th, in the materials that the council authorizes us to send to the county for the vote, we will formally inform the county of the map 107 and the districts that will be on the November 22 ballot.
Seeing no other hands at this time, I'm going to open it up to the community and the public and see if they have any statements or questions this time. And if you do, if you would please be as kind to raise your virtual hand, and the city clerk will assist us and bring you in.
The first speaker is Lori Greenberg. Hi, Lori, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I did have a question and needed clarification in regards to the new district voting. Is there a minimum requirement of votes that a candidate must receive before being elected to City Council in this new districting process? For instance, if there is just one candidate for a particular district and the voters don't care for this candidate and they don't vote for this candidate, does this candidate need to receive, if they receive 10% of the vote, are they automatically on city council? So I just want to know, is there a minimum requirement for votes for this candidate in the new districting? That is my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. Next speaker, please.
I currently see no other hands raised, but I'll give it a moment in case anybody else has interest in speaking. I'm going to drag out my speaking to see if they want to speak, and I'm not seeing hands. I'm sorry, I tried.
No, thank you for pausing just to make sure. Okay, with that said, we're going to bring it back to council, but at this time, I would ask for action from council so that we do officially close the public hearing, and at this point would come back and stay with council. So do I have action on the closing of the public hearing, please?
Through the mayor, I'll make a motion that we close public hearing.
Motion Hamilton, seconded Salazar. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And now we'll bring it back to the council for further discussion, questions, or comments. Councilmember Hamilton. And then
Mayor,
Councilmember
I
Salazar.
think this is probably a good time to answer the question that was asked in the comment.
That'd be fine?
I would suggest that.
Absolutely. No problem. We did have a question, and that I think we know the answer, but let's go to our folks that have seen us through the process. Ms. Parks, the question was, again, let's say you had a district, and there was one person running, and is there a percentile that that person must receive in order to win?
No, to my knowledge, there's not. We usually see more than one person running, however, in each district, particularly because one of the things that district-based elections do is reduce the cost of running for city council. So we often see more than one candidate. And if there were no candidate to run in the election, of course, the council could appoint a council member to fill that vacancy. So thank you for the question.
And then if I may, because I see he's ready, our city attorney.
Only to clarify, and just to make it crystal clear, there is no such requirement of any threshold number of votes that any candidate receives, regardless of the number of candidates. The only rule is under our current voting methodology that the candidate with the most votes wins. And that could be one vote or it could be 10,000 votes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Now, again, back to council for other comments, thoughts, etc. Vice Mayor Mason.
Thank you. I have some written comments, so prepare yourselves because it's a little bit long. So I received an email after one of our last public meetings asking why I have been so quiet in the recent council meetings regarding my thoughts on districting and maps. In particular, the member of the public stated that they felt the public deserved to know what those thoughts were. So in that moment that I read the email, I really had to reflect and remind myself that not all members of the public have actually been following this particular trajectory since the beginning, because people have lives outside of the council, and just because we are supposed to be here doesn't mean that members of the public are at every meeting. So I wanted to be sure to provide some context and some comments at this meeting regarding my thoughts on districting. First of all, the process began in March of 2020. On March 10th, we had a study session to receive a report and provide direction regarding the intention to transition to by-district method of elections, considering an adoption of a resolution appropriating $45,000 for general fund balance and authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with National Demographics Corporation for districting service. At this meeting, there was a consensus to move this item forward, which it did, to March 24, 2020. And under conduct of business in a consensus, there was an item entitled Receiving Report and Confirmed Date of Transition to a by-district method of city elections. Consider adopting a resolution appropriating $45,000 from general fund balance and authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with National Demographics Corporation for districting services.
The council decided to move forward with the route of districting after the census count was provided. It's worth noting that districting was not an area that the council had identified as a priority. The council originally by consensus vote, and again by consensus vote, provided direction to move forward. And since that initial vote, I have been opposed to moving forward with districting, and as of today, I have not been swayed that districting is the path for our city. And here are the reasons why. Number one, no alternatives have been presented. At the onset, my position was that in order to make an educated decision, we needed to have all options available to us. While districting has been found to meet the requirements in the California Voting Rights Act for communities of interest, it has not barred other methods, as we heard tonight. In fact, tonight is the first time we heard about other alternatives. We're $100,000 into the process, 6 public hearings in, and the final vote is tonight. But tonight we got these presentations at 5 o'clock during a special meeting. The council has provided the opportunity to learn more about this and other options 2 years ago, but decided to move forward with districting anyway. So first and foremost, we have not been provided with alternatives, regardless of whether those options are viable, high risk, have been used or not. The decision is ultimately the council's to make. I stated this in the beginning of the process and continue to raise this as a concern tonight. 2, threat of litigation. I have been asked by residents whether threat of litigation is true, and we are being forced to move to districting. My thoughts on this topic is that the City of San Bruno has not received a letter threatening litigation, not a hint that that letter was coming, and further did not have any data going into this contract with demographers or the company to believe that we would be under a valid threat of litigation. Remember that there are elements that have to be proven to succeed in a CVR claim. What is our risk within each one of those? We haven't had any discussions around those. Number 3, lack of true representation making impactful decisions. Imagine if Councilmember Hamilton is the district representative to Crestmore and is recused from any decisions related to the sale of Crestmore, a 40-acre potential development in his district. Imagine if Councilmember Salazar is the district representative in Mills Park and is recused from transit corridor decisions such as Mills Park, the largest development to impact Mills Park, likely since Mills Park was built. Or Mayor Medina is recused from Bay Hill Pacific Plan that will impact the entire city of San Bruno by its footprint, population, economics. And imagine if Councilmember Marty Medina, to differentiate, was the district representative to downtown, making decisions for businesses, wherein the owners do not vote, they don't live in San Bruno. These are all real situations. These are real issues that are currently before us or have come before us, and these recusals are real. So what happens when the person intended to represent you cannot, and the other 4 candidates support an action that may and will greatly impact your neighborhood and not theirs? Under districting, nothing. What's the impact? And what effort do voters need to put to remove council members that have made decisions that greatly impact their neighborhoods in ways that they do not support? In fact, any decision made requires 3 votes at a minimum. This means that decisions that greatly impact a district would not result or impact council members not in their district, absent voters in neighboring districts and in their own districts uniting, going out of their way and potentially unseating 3 neighboring districts in order to make a stand on issues that they do not agree with that impact their backyards. This is highly unlikely to occur, allowing council members to make decisions outside of their districts with very little fear of being voted out. Number 4, not holistic. The city has not made a decision yet on whether to place rotational mayor on the ballot, nor has a decision been made by the public on whether to accept it or not. While this is a different issue, the 2 are connected because as raised in October of 2021 and originally brought up as an item in 2020, if the public supports a rotating mayor, then we would really need to look at 5 districts. As a reminder, Half Moon Bay had planned to go to at-large mayor, then walked it backwards and stuck with the rotational mayor model. Belmont is receiving significant criticism on their path to move forward towards an at-large mayor system, and San Mateo has decided not to consider that large mayor option at this time. Both Belmont and San Mateo are much greater in population than San Bruno. At issue here, you have an at-large mayor that, although voted at large, has to live in one of the established 4 districts. That means that one district will have a district council member and an at-large mayor. With an equal weight of the vote, this means a single district will have 40% representation of the vote on any given item. It would have been preferred to determine the outcome of a potential for rotational mayor when first brought up in 2020 and then again raised recently for the 2022 ballot. Should it prevail, a 2024 implementation of districts would minimize confusion by voters once we have an answer to the rotational mayor issue. The decision is not taking into account the possible outcome by the public, and as a result, the public may end up paying twice for this process, greatly exceeding the $30,000 price tag often mentioned under this threat of letter that we never received, and clearly exceeding the $100,000 price tag we have already spent. Number 5, city divide. We have heard that we don't want to divide our neighborhoods, but are further dividing them by freeways, as if freeways and divides don't already create their own socioeconomic divides by their sole nature. And in conclusion, the public is closely following the City of Santa Monica case, where the city has fought the CVRA lawsuit. They were actually sued, and so far have successfully defended the CVRA. They have prevailed in the appellate court, wherein the court ruled in favor of the city and awarded costs to the city. Time will tell in which direction the Supreme Court goes, but worth mentioning is that the League of California Cities, that represents 476 California cities, filed a brief with the court, and I would simply state a letter of support supporting the City of Santa Monica. And while we await our findings, the Supreme Court's findings, we are continuing to move forward without knowledge of whether this is really required by our city, placing our constituents and voters in the middle. It is well worth acknowledging that it is long overdue that Rollingwood have a representative, as has been stated in many of the hearings. But even this may not result in someone from Portola Highlands running and winning, meaning that even representation in Rollingwood or of Rollingwood is not a guarantee, as we saw in the last election, where a resident of Rollingwood did run for office for the first time in many years, without districting, and simply did not win. There are other methods we heard tonight that can increase representation, including initiatives we will be reviewing, such as campaign contribution limits that would limit how much can be contributed to candidates, term limits limiting the amount of time that candidates can run for 4- and 2-year terms, allowing others an opportunity to run, rotational mayor providing equal representation to each district, and different methods of voting. As I've reflected on this change, I do want to acknowledge and thank the staff for the outreach to the community, members of the public who have engaged in the process, and my fellow council members for the thought placed on this item tonight. The irony of all of this was really our last meeting, wherein the council in a consensus vote supported districting in an election cycle affecting this next election. Based on the consensus, effective November 2022, we would be implementing districting in San Bruno. The decision made by my 4 male council members was not to allow one council member the opportunity to run for their seat. This unintended but real impact occurred on none other than International Women's Day, and ironically removed the opportunity for the only female on council to run for her seat. For the reasons stated above, and to lend a vote to those who do not support districting and have provided public comment throughout this process, I will not be supporting this item tonight, have not supported this item from the onset, and thank all members of the public for their participation. I acknowledge and understand the validity of why districts offer an alternative to at-large elections that may provide additional opportunities to those that may not otherwise run for office. I also believe strongly that representation is important. I am not convinced that districting will bring the results desired here in San Bruno. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Other comments or feedback from colleagues on this item for staff or the presenters? Councilmember Salazar, then Councilmember Hamilton, and then Councilmember Medina.
So my comment, in light of the previous speaker, it seems my comment is very trivial, but I just want to acknowledge the Vice Mayor, her comments. I know she has given this a lot of thought, and in the initial go around, I didn't support the districts either, but you know, it's the majority of the council voted at the time to move forward, and so we are where we are right now. My only question at this point was regarding the public map 104, the way it's drawn out and the way the description is written. This is pretty minor, and it may be too late at this point to make a change, but I noticed at the very southern tip of the map, there's a little extension of District 2 that crosses 280 into District 3. There's nobody lives there. There's no dwellings in that area. But it did look a little funny to me when I zoomed in to look at some of the details. And I was wondering if that could be changed so that District 2 is completely contained on the western side of 280 rather than having that little tail slip across the freeway to the other backside of Junipero Serra Park.
Yeah, if I may, absolutely. NDC does its final technical review of the map once it's been approved, and we can make any of these small changes that do not affect population. What happens sometimes when a member of the public is creating a map is they may not be paying attention to, one side of the freeway versus another, right? Because it's a sort of non-material issue. So yes, we can make that change.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
I also want to thank the Vice Mayor for her comments, all of which are true. And the irony of the vote at the last meeting was not lost. That was the first comment that I made to my wife after we adjourned, was that the four men on council voted that the one woman can't run again on International Women's Day. And that's horrible. That decision was that regarding which election goes which. There's still can't find a reason to choose anything else. But I think what's at the heart of the discussion now is whether to move ahead at all. We received two presentations earlier today. There was only a few members of the public in attendance. A special meeting at 5 o'clock looking at alternative voting methods. And the Vice Mayor is absolutely correct that this is the first time we've really seen any detail of any other options. If we were to pause and choose to not move ahead for 2022, the effort that's been done till now wouldn't necessarily be lost, because one of the things that we learned, if we were, for example, to go to a proportional ranked choice voting system, that we could use Public Map 104 as its basis and divide the city into two districts, would be 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 as two districts, and move forward with that. But we would need to become a charter city first. So there's a whole bunch of different steps that would need to take place. The other big question, and the Vice Mayor detailed this already, is are we going to a rotating mayor or not? And that's going to be up to the voters. First of all, it's going to be up to us to whether we even put it on the ballot. That hasn't been decided yet. And then even if we put it on the ballot, it's going to be up to the voters. And again, that would mean that we have to draw 5 districts, and we would need to do that anyway. So I guess what it comes down to is the decision that put us on this path. That decision was made before I joined. I wasn't part of that. And the decision was made that we needed to move to, and that resolution said that we would move to district elections by 2022. I'm sorry, by 2024, 2022. 2020 was out of the question because I don't even know why that was an option. There was no possible way they ever could have hit that, given that that vote was taken in, I believe, in April. So that put us on the path to where we are now. Given what we learned earlier tonight, and given that it certainly would make sense to see what the landscape is before we move ahead, and also considering that we would potentially be moving from one voting system that we have today, which is majority vote, to district elections, and then potentially if the city charter is passed and that charter includes proportional representation, we would change it again. And that would be 3 consecutive elections with 3 different voting methods. And I think that that's a heck of a lot of change. So given all of this, I am supportive of pausing on moving ahead with districting, taking all the work that we've done and just putting it to one side for now. We're not throwing it away, and moving ahead with these other options so that we can make an informed decision and have whatever final landscape this is going to look like in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Medina.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton and Salazar and Vice Mayor Mason for your comments. For those that didn't watch this from the last meeting, this was a very difficult decision for us, but I believe it was necessary. In 2020, or when we were trying to figure out to try to do it in 2020, we knew that the census was coming out and we needed that data. And so part of the reason I was in support of that was if we go ahead and say that we're going to go to district elections in 2022, using the data from 2020, we buy ourselves some time to figure out what we want to do. So then we move along and we were looking at a rotational mayor and the need to put that on the ballot. Having a special election, I believe we heard from staff that it was very expensive, $500,000 to have a special election. And there was no interest, and I wasn't supporting that. So we continue moving forward with this, and we talked about going to 5 districts and found out that a little later than we would prefer that would have rushed our process instead of from the 4, what the public understood, to adding it to 5 in the event that in this upcoming election in 2022 that the public decided, hey, we do want rotational mayor. The other thing that's necessary to move forward with an alternative voting method, which we were told prior to our decisions, but we had a presentation on a full study session this evening on it, was that in order to do that, we needed to have, that we have to become a charter city. To become a charter city, that has to be on an election, and we're talking about putting that on 2022. So here we are. I will acknowledge the irony in the vote on that day, but I can absolutely guarantee everyone here, my vote was for what was reasonable moving forward with the situation that the council was facing. That as other councils in other cities had to do, just by chance or by the luck of the draw, that council members live together, and trying to draw a line between council members so they are not in the same district is absolutely contrary to what the whole point of what districting is. So we can respectfully disagree on whether or not districting is important, whether or not we're going to wait for a letter, but other neighboring cities have received that letter. And the reason why we didn't receive a letter is because we said in 2020 that we're going to take care of it in 2022. And the city attorney, I think if we could help out, well, we're never going to know, why we didn't get a letter, but clearly, since we've already made it a path forward in going with district elections, it'd be silly for a letter to show up. So I'm interested in what me, that would seem like that would be a red flag that, okay, they're not going to do what they said they were going to do in 2022. And what we also know from going through this process is that in Roland, the District 1, their demographics are that there is no council person of Asian descent that is on the council. And I think that's a red flag. Like, that would be, we did the homework for an attorney, I would think, to say, hey, look, over in San Bruno, they got a high percentage of people from a particular area that hasn't had any representation for however long it has been this way. So it's interesting, and how, if we could have changed certain things, but that's just not how it works. We have to make the decisions in the time with the information that we have. We are moving forward with we are moving forward with putting the charter city on the ballot. At least that's where we're leading to, and we're going to be talking about, I guess, at the next council meeting. So I'm interested in hearing some more about Councilman Hamilton's suggestion or preference. And we haven't heard from the mayor, so it'd be interesting, also beneficial to hear from him, and maybe even Councilman Salazar, as Councilman Hamilton kind of expressed his views, and we can see how it goes from there. So those are my comments for now.
Thank you, and you will, and everybody had their hands up, but you did ask of the city attorney. We saw that he is here and with his mic on, so why don't we, if that's okay, we ask city attorney to respond at this time.
Of course, just a couple of thoughts, members of the City Council. Obviously a difficult issue. The presentations earlier were intriguing, and I think, as both of them said, there's no perfect system of elections. Generally, what you try to do is figure out what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and then adopt one or other of the methods, each of which have different variations, as I think you've heard, to sort of address that particular problem. So I think at the moment, there doesn't appear to be a clear articulation from the City Council about what the problem is that would be solved by adopting an alternative voting mechanism. But leaving that aside, I think the notion of pausing the decision, I guess it depends on what you mean by pause. So if pausing means to not implement district elections for the 2022 election cycle, then I think, as I've mentioned in other presentations, and I think as our consultant has also indicated, there's really an extremely high risk of the city being sued under that circumstance, because, as Councilmember Medina pointed out, you adopted a resolution that says you're going to do it in either 2020 or 2022. So if you don't do it in 2022, somebody will understandably ask, why didn't you? And the city's answer presumably would be, well, that's because the City Council wanted to study different alternative election methods, but they really haven't made any decision about it. They don't know which one they want to implement, and it's really not clear whether they're going to address any of the problems. And moreover, none of them have really been formally approved as an alternative to district elections, except perhaps in unusual circumstances that we haven't really fully studied. So I think one of the speakers earlier said that their method was not in the safe harbor provision under the CVRA. So we already know that presumptively it's likely going to be disallowed, or a high likelihood of litigation anyway. Whether it would be successful or not is hard to say. But of course, litigation doesn't have to be successful in order to be expensive. The other aspect of it is that while the City Council may choose to put a charter at the November 2022 election, remember, there's no guarantee that voters will approve it. So if the voters don't approve the charter, then you're actually stuck going past the 2024 election, because then you can't put the charter on until another general election. You can't do that at a special election. So the difficulty is that then, in theory, you might actually be postponing districts until 2026 or later. So I think there are a variety of issues with potting, and as high a legal risk I think is we can evaluate at this point. But more importantly, I think the postponement of the district elections on the hope that a charter would be adopted with an alternative election system embedded in it or otherwise is really speculation at this point. And the last point is that even if the city voters decided to adopt the charter, if you have a standalone item, for example, on the ballot for alternative voting mechanisms in the event that the charter were to be adopted, that might fail. So if you defer district elections until after the 2022 election, as I indicated, there just isn't any guarantee that they'll even come back in 2024. So I think there's a quite high degree of risk given all those circumstances.
Councilmember Medina, any follow-up? Or did that give you what you needed? Okay, thank you. Now, Vice Mayor, then we'll go to myself. Vice Mayor.
So this is for the City Attorney. So my recollection of the 2020 meeting was that the reason that this was titled intent is because that opportunity would be there to change. I think there was a whole conversation, if I recall, around the word intent. And I just want to make sure that that holds true today, because based on what you're saying, it sounds like that is not an option at this time, but was presented as such in 2020.
No, Vice Mayor Mason, it certainly is an option. All I'm advising is that it comes with attendant risk if you choose that option. You can say you intend to do something and not do it, which is what this would be tantamount to, but then there is a risk associated with that decision.
I'm drinking water right now, so I'll go to Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to chime back in because I didn't really state an opinion one way or the other, so I appreciate Councilmember Medina's prompting. And so I would say that I am at this point not in favor of delaying the decision for the same reason that I was not in favor of modifying the process at the last hour. And acknowledging the fact that we got more information today, at least in my opinion, the information that we did receive earlier was not compelling enough for me to say, wait a minute, we really missed a great opportunity here. I believe we heard one of the statistics is that 50 cities in the country have gone to one of these alternative methods. And given that there's probably close to 20,000 cities, that's less than 1% of cities that have gone that route. And in California, we have this new, more stringent requirement. And so we've gone through the process. I don't believe we should close the door on looking at other opportunities going forward, but I think at this point, we have made a commitment, even though I wasn't completely in favor in the beginning. Having gone this far down the process and having received public input and having vet out the solutions and having real evidence that while this solution may not be the only solution or possibly even the best solution, it is a solution that might encourage better broad participation and might encourage people that might not have run otherwise to run. So it's not the only solution, but it is a solution. We're very far down the process, and so I'm going to suggest that we not change course at this point and see what happens with the charter city when that does appear on the ballot, and then make another decision based on those opportunities that are created at that point.
Thank you, everybody, and for everybody's comments and remarks. And I think during this whole process, I think it's been alluded to by somebody else, but I think everybody's acted within professional, collegiate, and I appreciate that. So some of my concerns, until we were in our study session, I didn't know how much, until Councilmember Medina mentioned how much the city that is in the state Supreme Court has spent on fighting this. And I think you said $6 million, which I was shocked. I will tell you that in my way, if we could divide it up and do with it right, that it affects no one, that would be my ideal choice. But I know that wasn't realistic in some respects or another. I know that I've been getting calls over this weekend. We're just talking to folks, and there's certain electeds in school districts and cities that are districting and have been forced to do it with very nominal time. And there are folks that will be off their elected bodies this November. I'm surprised at some because, you just don't know. But like you said, it's hard just to draw the perfect line and map. We have gone through this process for some time. If there was a magic map we could bring forward, but I don't see it. The only other alternative was to have the other districts up for the election of the two folks that have their term up. That would then give that opportunity. But I do have the risk of the liability. I think we've gone through this process. There's a lot of what ifs. If we put the charter on the ballot, if that passes, if then the rank voting, if we put it on about the rotational mayor, if that passes, if we put term limits on the ballot, if that passes. So that's not a guarantee, but I can understand trying to wait and look at the big picture. I think tonight's presentations are great, but we do need to be a charter city where those options aren't afforded to us. So that's my immediate concern, having gone through the process to this degree, having, like I said, at the last meeting, it bothered me. I think it bothered everybody because, that's not what we want to do. And so, anyway, I'm rambling now. Vice Mayor Mason, then Councilmember Hamilton.
Yeah, so I just want to say the purpose of my comments were to ensure that I do believe that the member of the public who emailed me was correct, and I needed to make it clear where my stance was, but also to state that it was not new. I've just been quiet because when I watched the old meetings, I talked quite a bit, so I didn't think it needed to be rehashed all over again. And I just did want to say that the issue of term limits, rotational mayor, and charter, they all did come up in 2020 and then were supported. And so had we had the staffing, had we had the support, we may have decided those in 2020 so that we knew where we were now in 2022. So, the effort was made so that we did this in order, but it didn't receive support. So thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
And the Vice Mayor's last comment is really at the core of what the issue is here, is that the order of operations isn't working out. I want to be clear that, and I mentioned this earlier, that the decision to go on this path for district elections was made before I got here, and there's been this is our 6th public hearing on this, and at a few of these hearings we've been asked for action, and we've taken votes. In hearing 4, we chose a map. In hearing 5, we confirmed that map and determined the election order. But only now in hearing 6 am I, as a council member, being asked, should we do this at all? It's the first opportunity I've had to say, up or down, should we even do this at all? So the question that the city attorney brought up earlier as to someone who might choose to litigate or whatever would come and answer, ask the question, why did we not do what we said we were going to do? And the answer to that is a lot more, in my opinion, is a lot more clear than the murkiness in the examples that were given. It's because we have alternatives that require us to go to the ballot, and we can't do all of these things simultaneously. Clearly, it's obvious we're going to do something. We're not spending all of this effort and having all these hearings and doing all of this because we intend to leave everything as it is. That's my main point, and the other biggest point here is that what I said earlier, which is we will be moving to a new election system here in November, moving to district elections, which is going to be a big change for folks. And then very likely, or at least, potentially, if a charter is passed, then we would be making another change again, and which I don't think is ideal. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
And the only thing is, we did have some options, and one of the options was to put some, slow it down, put some brakes on it. That was an alternative at one point. And that's where I think we have worked well together, but it has not been. I'm pausing because I just saw City Hall's hand go up. Why don't we go to City Hall, and then we'll come back.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager Grogan, hand went up not in relation to your comment, but I just wanted to highlight 2 things. The 5 p.m. study session on alternative voting methods was meant to align to your conversation around the city charter. Your first study session on that charter is scheduled for May 29th. Your final decision on that charter will not occur until likely July 12th because the decision has to be sent to the county in August. It's important to note that the conversation around alternative voting methods did come up in prior conversations with the city council. And at that time, it was discussed that any of those alternatives would require becoming a charter city, which would inevitably delay the transition to districts to 2024 at the earliest. There was a discussion around that, and the city attorney provided a similar analysis that he did tonight about the potential legal risk of postponing the decision to 2024. And at that time, the city council did decide to continue with the districting process. And so I just want to point that out, because while it is very true that you received new and additional information tonight at the 5 p.m. study session about alternative voting methods, that was meant to inform your future conversation on charter. But the decision to continue with this process, knowing that an alternative voting system could not at the earliest be implemented until 24, was talked about, and the decision was made to continue with this process. And so I just wanted to elevate that a little bit more, because I know there's been some comments about we've received new information today, but a decision was made earlier to actually bifurcate and separate these processes, because moving to alternatives would actually delay the decision. Just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, thank you for the Councilmember Medina.
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize. I found a correction in my notes. It's Santa Clara that spent $6 million in 4 years fighting and eventually conceding that they lost. And the amount that Santa Monica has spent has not been disclosed. In the newspaper report that I read, the other attorneys were asking for $19 million in attorney fees. So I wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what happens to this process, or the work that's been done, or the dollars that have been spent? And I know there is question, and let me tell you, there are folks that have lived in our community a long time, former electeds, who are just don't like the districting, honestly. It's something hard to imagine, and in a lot of folks' world, we are too small of a city to be districted. But then there's Half Moon Bay. You know, Belmont's, 29,000 folks. We're at 43, around there. Millbrae, Burlingame. So the school districts, high schools is going to districting this November. Community College Board already has. So it is happening. They have received letters, but then, they have their I think it's 90 days, right, in which to make it happen. So could that happen to us, where we say, let's pause, a letter comes, and does that mean then we have 90 days in which to do this, or because we're too close to the 2022 election, we don't have to worry about that until the next one? I don't know who may have the city attorney.
Well, I'll only address that to say that in the likely event that we were to receive a letter, it would then rely on our ability to persuade the person writing the letter that we were actually going to do something that was compliant with the CVRA, which is at the moment by no means certain. So I think it would be, the argument would be, well, we're going to do one of these things, these other things. And that's sort of all we could say, I think, at that point. And we certainly could not complete that process, I don't think, in a reasonable fashion within 90 days. That would be a real stretch to try to figure out, what system do you want to have and go through all the pros and cons. Suppose it's possible, but see that Kristen is on and she may have some additional comments.
Please.
I just wanted to add that if the process pauses and you do receive a lawsuit letter threatening litigation if you do not comply, and you choose to, not restart the process, right, or not allow the districting to continue, what that means is that you could actually be forced into it for the 2022 election and have a map imposed by a judge, as opposed to this process, which has involved the public, and the council did select a map drawn by a member of the public.
Thank you, because I think you had mentioned that before, and I've just forgotten that element. That is maybe not likely, but a possibility. Well, council, we're here at the 6th meeting, and what's the pleasure of the council?
Well, start with waiving the reading. If we have to take action to waive the second reading.
Yes, the first action would be to waive the second reading. There's been a motion made to waive a second reading. That's not on the adoption of the ordinance. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
A motion made and seconded to waive the second reading. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
No.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason?
No.
Mayor Medina?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2 with Councilmember Hamilton and Vice Mayor Mason opposed.
Okay, next, we could either adopt the ordinance, which would bring this whole process to finality, or make an amendment, or choose to do something different. But and of course, attorney, you can step in at any time if I'm going off where we're not permitted to do so. I think it's Mike didn't go on, so I think we're okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
No other action. I will make a motion to adopt the ordinance, adopting the district map and amending the municipal code, chapter 2.32.010, regarding municipal elections.
Is there a second? There's been a motion. Thank you. Motion made, seconded. Salazar, Medina. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
No.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason?
No.
Mayor Medina?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2 with Councilmember Hamilton and Vice Mayor Mason opposed.
Okay. Colleagues, thank you again. Like I said, through this whole process, I appreciate everyone's thoughts, passion to the process, and to San Bruno. What I think I'd like to do, with council's permission, I'd like to go ahead and do the announcements and presentations. Okay with council? I would like to take maybe just a 5-minute break after that before we get into consent. And then we'll get into conduct. So at this time, we're going to move forward to item 6, announcements and presentations. And I have some assistance here from the city clerk. First item, save the date. Community Division will partner with the
Mayor Medina, your mic went out there.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Save the date. The Community Services Department Recreation Division will partner with the San Bruno Lions Club for a pancake breakfast and the San Bruno Rotary Club for the egg hunt. The event will take place on April 9th, next month, from 9 to 10:30 a.m. That's the breakfast, with the egg hunt countdown beginning at 11 a.m. sharp, with 4 egg hunt areas designated by ages for 8 and under between Lara Field and Diamond 2 at San Bruno City Park. And so it's nice. First, thank you to the Lions and to the Rotary for all of their effort and work, and as well as it's nice to have this come back. So I hope to see you there, and hopefully the weather will be beautiful. Next item, item B. The deadline to apply for rent and utilities relief is March 31st, 2022. All applications must be submitted by the deadline in order to be considered for funding. Qualified renters and landlords impacted by COVID-19 should apply at housingiskey.com or 833-430-2122, which is also on the screen there for everyone to see. So thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, folks. And again, I'd say, 6-7 minutes, if that's okay, just to take a short recess. And if you could all stay logged in. And I'm sorry, you know what? Before I stop, though, let me see if there's anybody from the public who wanted to comment on the announcements. And then also I see Vice Mayor Mason has her hand up on announcements.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Medina. I just want to say I got an email today, and I'm going to link it to the egg hunt, but our staff is also doing the egg, I guess it's like an egg basket drop. So just a reminder, because I'm seeing that they're already selling out. So I guess someone surprises you and leaves like a basket of eggs at your house for your kids. So check it out on our website. It's pretty neat. And then just from my other life, my full-time job, I just wanted to really echo and highlight the March 31st deadline. The state has extensively helped renters behind in rent. I have seen hundreds of thousands of dollars returned to agencies, to individuals. So it is real. If people think it's not a real program out there, it is a real program. I have seen it. I have worked on it myself. So if you are behind in rent and it's related to COVID, please make sure to apply by March 31st before this particular benefit is gone, because it really is a great opportunity to catch up on your rent if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate that. Thank you for making that special note. I think it's important. With that, why don't we go ahead and recess until 8:30. But please keep logged in. have items A through G. Are there any items that anybody wants to pull for a separate vote? Seeing none, are there any items that council members wish to ask or make a comment? Seeing none at this time, is there any action on consent?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
A motion made, seconded. Salazar, Hamilton. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason? Vice Mayor Mason? I'm gonna assume that's an aye. We can't hear. Can you nod? I don't know. Okay, yes. And Mayor Medina?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will move on to item 8, conduct of business, and City Clerk.
Item 8A, adopt a resolution approving the design, authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Golden Bay Construction for the Huntington/San Antonio Bicycle Corridor project in the amount of $1,123,104, approving a construction contingency of $285,000, approving a total budget in the amount of $1,588,104, and appropriating $843,467 from the gas tax fund.
Thank you for reading that. I want to pause for a moment and go back to consent because I'm just realizing I don't think I asked for any public input. So let me make sure that that was taken care of. So, and I apologize, everyone. So if we can go back to under consent, if there were any items from the public that wanted to speak or comment.
I see Paul Wipenski. I see your hand is raised. Was this a question or comment on the consent calendar?
No, it's for item 8A.
Okay. Just wanted to be make sure. Okay, with item 8A, we're going to turn it over to the Public Works Director, Mr. Lee.
Good evening, Mayor, good evening, members of council. My name is Matt Lee, Public Works Director. Tonight I have before you David Wong, our Principal Engineer and CIP Manager, who's been working very diligently on this project with the presentation. David, can you start the slides, please?
I apologize. I didn't realize David was speaking, so I'm just bringing him in.
Okay.
Good evening, members of City Council. Let me bring up the presentation and then we could begin. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so the item up for discussion at this time is the Huntington San Antonio Bike Corridor project. And before I dive into the meat of the presentation, just a quick agenda. I'll be going over the background of the project and how it got started. We'll talk about the project location and where it is in relation to the city, what the scope of work is, what staff's recommendation is for this project, and then I'll open up for any questions should there be any. So, background. So, how did this project start? So, back in July of 2016, City Council adopted a walk and bike plan. This is actually the first walk and bike plan that the city of San Bruno had, and one of the primary purposes of this walk and bike plan was to create east-west as well as north-south connections for bicyclists in San Bruno, as well as creating connections to the north with the city of South San Francisco and connections to the south with with Millbrae to the south. And as part of that process, the walk and bike plan created a proposed bikeway network for the entire city. So here you can see kind of various types of bike paths, bike trails, class 3, class 4, class 1, and they kind of create a network that once fully constructed creates an easy way for pedestrians to go east, west, north, south, as well as to the neighboring jurisdictions. So kind of with all cities, cities are dealing with limited funding. So staff on a regular basis, we apply for grant opportunities as they become available and use the city's available funding as a local match. Doing that kind of stretches the funding that we have and allows us to put together larger projects. So back in 2017, city staff applied for TDA Article 3 grant, and we were actually selected for an award of $385,000 approximately. So some of the constraints on that grant is that it must be used on bike and ped improvements only, and it has to be complete. The entire project has to be complete by August 2022. So kind of going back to the project location, so where is this project exactly? This map is rotated in order to get it to fit on the slide. So north is kind of pointing diagonal this way. So this project is this orange highlighted area, and it runs from pretty much downtown San Bruno at San Mateo Avenue and goes south, which is to the right on the slide, to the Millbrae border right here. Here you can kind of see it's to the east of Common Point 82 and south of I-380. So Huntington Avenue becomes San Antonio Avenue at San Felipe, so that's why it's called the Huntington San Antonio Bike Corridor Project. This is the scope of work, and I'm not going to talk too much about it on this slide, just to kind of highlight these are sort of the major improvements that will be constructed with that project, and we'll step into more detail of each of these particular improvements on each individual slide that's coming up right now. So again, this is it started. The primary purpose of this is it's a bike project. So as shown in the walk and bike plan and that proposed bikeway network, this green line that runs from San Mateo Avenue to the Millbrae border right here, and is proposed to be a enhanced Class 3 bike route. So an enhanced Class 3 bike route is really a shared lane roadway that has been enhanced with additional visibility. A shared lane marking is this kind of bicycle symbol that's thermoplastic. It's applied to the ground and it's got these chevrons. It is to warn motorists that they need to share the road with bicyclists. And enhanced would be this kind of green border that is now going to be painted around it. So that's what's proposed, and that's the primary purpose of this project. There are other improvements with this project. At the same time, we're also going to be doing pedestrian improvements. So we'll be doing a bunch of curb extensions. Some people refer to as bulb outs at various locations. The primary curb extension is going to be at Huntington Avenue and Angus Avenue. And what it's going to do is it's going to create this kind of picture right here. It's not that location, but it'll look something similar. And it's also going to add a fourth crossing. That intersection right now is a four-way stop control intersection with 3 crosswalks. So with the completion of this project, it will have 4 crosswalks. And at 3 other locations, which are mid-block crossings, we'll be constructing these sort of mid-block bulb outs. It'll look similar to this picture right here, minus what is a pole that you see is actually a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That is not included on this project. Along with the curb extensions, we'll be installing various accessible curb ramps at various locations, these purple and yellow dots, to improve accessibility for pedestrians that are walking along the bike corridor. So in order to fully realize the benefits of a Class 3 enhanced bike corridor, it's ideal to install those greenback trails on pavement that is in fair or good condition for really 2 reasons. The first reason is that having kind of newish pavement provides a smoother surface for bicyclists to ride on. They really feel it because their bicycles don't leave any shocks. And it encourages bicycle riding by having good pavement. And the second reason is actually enhances the visibility, because when thermoplastic is applied on pavement that is degraded, that tends to affect the look and make it not stand out as much to motorists. So going back a little bit, This area actually has been the site of various projects, and it's actually repaved a good portion of the project site already. So back in 2019, there was actually avenues, what city refers to avenues 1-1, 1-2 water main replacement project, and it actually repaved Huntington Avenue from San Mateo Avenue to Florida Avenue through a project last year that's about to close out this year, the Avenues 1-3 project. It repaved Florida Avenue to San Felipe Avenue, and there was a paving project that was also grant funded that repaved San Antonio Avenue from Santa Dominga Avenue to Santa Ynez Avenue. So the areas that are not highlighted are actually in good condition. We recently took care of it and repaved it. This area in red is part of the base bid, and staff included as part of the base bid because it's actually in poor condition. That's what staff considers this area. So it would be optimum to repave this area. This area in yellow is also in a condition that's not so great. But the reason why it was not originally included in the work when staff was planning out the project was at the time, staff was forecasting that we would be replacing the water and sewer utilities in this area. But with the update to the water master plan that is currently in progress, it looks like that project prioritization for this area is being pushed back and it won't be occurring in the near future. So we're recommending that we also repave this area. The last remaining area is this area in blue. It's actually in fair condition. It's not bad, but it is pretty interesting because actually half of the roadway, I guess on the right for the slide, the orientation belongs to Mowbray and half of it belongs to San Bruno. So City of San Bruno staff, we've been talking to our counterparts with Millbrae, and it appears that they're open to entering into a cost-sharing agreement. So if we're able to execute a cost-sharing agreement with Millbrae in time, then we'll repave Santa Helena as long as we're able to get that cost-sharing agreement in time without jeopardizing the grant funding, which requires that the project be complete by August 2022. So with that, staff's recommendation is that we adopt the resolution, approve design, execute construction contract with Golden Bay Construction, approve a construction contingency of $285,000, approve a total budget of $1,588,104, and appropriate $843,467 from the gas tax fund. And with that, I'll open up for questions.
Thank you for the presentation. And I would like to go to colleagues at this time, and then we will go ahead and go to the public. Councilmember Medina.
Yes, first of all, thank you, staff. San Antonio and Huntington have been in really poor shape for quite a while. Understandably, a number of different projects are going through there. So it's great to see us moving forward with this. A couple questions. One, in clarifying the policy. When water and sewer pipes are installed, I've noticed that lately we've been paving the whole street side to side, and understandably, when we pave the roads, we need to install the curb ramps as required for ADA requirements. So if we can go back to the slide that shows the whole length of the project, and it was my understanding that the very southern end of San Antonio, I recall hearing that there was a property dispute. My understanding of it was that BART still had the ownership of half of the street. So is it fair to say that that dispute is no longer in question, that street, the full length of the street, is the city's? And my second part of that is, if the BART owns the property and their trees are damaging the street, which it is in numerous locations, what does the city do in having BART maybe contribute to the street? Because as you grind that down, you're going to run into the roots, and you're going to potentially damage the health of the tree. And a number of those trees there are they're quite old and are likely to fall. So those are my first questions about clarifying the policy in paving. For Santa Helena, has all the utilities already been in there? And I think that may be true. The worst thing to do would be to pave a street and then come back and rip it out a couple of years later. But I understand for this project, we're facing a section of that, which we pretty much have to. I drove this section. I really avoid driving the street because it is in such poor shape and you're bouncing along and it's only getting worse. I think my last question would be for the addition of speed bumps. I'm sorry, I have another question after that. The addition of speed bumps, that we could add those later, but clearly they're not part of the project for the time being. The TSP has a new toolkit and that allows speed bumps to be installed, and I'm sure this would be one of them that should be there. Those are my questions for now. Oh, I'm sorry. The last comment is there are 3 driveways that enter BART property that lead to gates or a wire that BART utilizes to access their property and to get to the track side. And it would be proper and best management practices for those driveway approaches to actually be paved and constructed, because right now it just bounces right into dirt. Just wanted to leave those comments with you and hopefully see BART do their part to keep from tracking mud and debris onto newly paved streets. And I'm sorry, I got one more question. I saw it here as I drove through today. So there's a section right there from Georgia to Florida that the street really becomes really wide. And it's my understanding that wider streets attract quicker cars. And is anything planned? I haven't seen anything on the plans, but what could we do with putting a line in the street to kind of make it appear that it's more narrow, because that street really widens out from Florida to Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Medina, through the chair. There was a couple of questions there. I'm going to try to attempt to answer some of them, and we'll go from there. Hopefully I can get most of them. So for St. Helena, the question is, have utilities been replaced in that location? I'll defer for water and sewer lines to our principal engineer, David Wong, to answer, but for our stormwater, we are doing some spot repairs in the next coming week or two on St. Helena. So those, we definitely do try to coordinate all our utility repairs before we do the paving. The goal is to not go and dig it up twice. I think sometimes that's not possible just given the timing and the resources that we have and when we have to do repairs in certain areas. But we always do try to find alignment whenever possible. That's precisely why we're deciding now to resurface San Antonio Avenue from San Felipe to Santa Dominga, because of the fact that the work plan has now pushed back the replacement of those utility lines. To answer your question about the BART property and the driveways and the wide road, I will defer to our principal engineer, David Wong.
Hi. Okay. So thanks, Matt. I'm gonna try to answer any questions that hopefully you might have missed, and hopefully I don't miss any. And I guess we can always ask Councilmember Medina to re-ask the questions that we might have missed. Okay. So first question, I'm gonna tackle the BART property. So My understanding, I'm gonna start this slideshow right here. Okay, right here. Councilmember Medina is correct that the portion of Huntington Avenue, about half of it is not within city's jurisdiction. That portion is actually north of San Felipe Avenue. And with the Avenues 1-3 project that is now wrapping up, the city did enter into we did get a precaution permit from a BART to do work in that area, and it was repaved. This area to the right, which is actually south of San Felipe Avenue, is wholly within the city's right of way. The roadway is actually a bit narrower in that area. I think it's 34 feet or something. And then past the curb would be not city of San Bruno's property. So we're not going to run into any issues with BART that area. Second question, I believe, was driveways in this area. I don't recall there being any driveways along the face curb in the area that we're planning to repave, which is south of San Felipe Avenue. But that is a good comment, and we'll double check to make sure that we don't miss that. And then I believe the last question was in regards to Santa Helena Avenue, and this entire area under the previous water master plan was actually the avenues for what we call the 4- project, but with the update that's going on right now, we probably won't be getting to any of these streets within the next 5+ years, probably. So if we were to repave this area, I think it would be worth it just because it's a while before we would get to it with the utility project. We may or we may not repave. I think it depends on whether or not we're able to enter into cost sharing agreement with Mowbray. And due to the kind of the time constraints of the event. I believe that was the questions that were asked. I see Councilmember Medina has hand raised. I'll stop talking.
Please go ahead, Mr. Medina.
Yes, thank you for that clarification on the property. I know that's been kind of an ongoing issue with BART, being that for a while there, the homeless were gathering along that section of property, and then BART put up some signs finally. But my question about the trees and how the tree roots are at the surface, and you can see where in a couple of locations they were buckling the road. In the event that as you're digging those, grinding those out, and I don't know if you're going to do any deeper repairs to the subgrade there, but just the likelihood of encountering roots there, and if it was a tree that was owned by BART, they would be responsible, I would think, for the damage caused to the street. I can send you the 3 driveways that I took pictures of today. I just went by there and just out of curiosity. So those are my questions. Anything that can be done about the wideness of the street, the appearance between Florida and Georgia, because speed and bikes don't mix well. What could possibly be done there, or has it been brought forward? Maybe that's a project later or some striping, but right now I think just wanted to see what staff thought about that. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as my knowledge, nothing has been brought forward about the width of that location yet, but I think you bring up a good point as we're thinking about this project. A lot of the things that you mentioned, Councilmember Medina, is a lot of traffic calming measures for a roadway. And so that's obviously, those items would be brought up at TSPC. I can defer to David for any additional comments.
Right, thanks, Matt. So I just want to add on to that the city does have a new traffic calming policy, and if the residents, it pretty much requires that the residents that will be living in the residing area contact the TSPC and requests that traffic calming be done. And then as one of the toolkits that we have in the traffic calming program, one of them is actually what Councilmember Dean was saying, which would be fog lines or a center line to kind of visually make the road appear narrower to lower speeds. I do want to add, kind of related to that, is we are installing traffic calming, not speed bumps, but we will be putting in 2 radar speed feedback signs in this area. So that should hopefully alleviate some of the speeding that you may have seen.
Councilmember Medina.
Great. I didn't pick that up, but that would be wonderful. And probably we would have to wait for the street to get paved anyhow before we do a speed study, because I think the potholes slow people down enough. I mean, if you try to go through that area at 30 miles an hour, you're going to blow out a tire, or so they've got some natural speed potholes there. So thank you for the report. I'm in support of this. I know this section of street has been in really disrepair for a long time, and it's great to see us move forward, especially with some grant money. So thank you for this report.
Vice Mayor Mason.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask if this complements the streetscape plan, and that they're aligned as far as the presentation we got on streetscape about a year ago, maybe longer now.
If I think you're referring to the downtown streetscape plan, San Mateo Avenue.
No, and maybe I'm calling it the wrong thing. It's the presentation that Haiwan gave on the schedule for streets to be repaved and redone. And it was a great presentation, but it provides all the different streets and how they're measured and what the need is. And so I think that's one of the most common questions we get. And I just want to make sure that these different plans are complementing each other.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I think you're referring to the Street Saver program, which looks at the road conditions of the streets within the city of San Bruno. And so what we generally do as part of the Saver program, it provides a list of streets to be repaved at a specific time given the funding amount and the road conditions. What we do with a lot of these general plans is they're just that. They're plans, and we need to factor all the various plans in, because we have a water master plan, we have a sewer master plan, and so what we do is we take those plans and we actually make sure we coordinate it so that we can disrupt the public as minimally as possible. It's great for us to do all this work, but as more and more work come in, there will be more areas of disruption, and we're really trying to minimize that. And so these are factored in. Obviously, some of these street locations probably were not slated to be paved until a later time. Because we got the grant for the bike corridor to come in, we've decided to repave those streets, like the 2 roadblock sections that we were discussing on San Antonio Avenue.
Okay, I think just Director Lee, since that's a question I'll probably be asking more regularly, because I just want to see where we are with the plan. That I can send it over to you via email, but it would be good to get an update on that. But in particular, as we're spending, this is over $1 million, and we get calls and say, well, why isn't my street repaved yet? It's good to be able to say, well, we have this grant money now. It applies specifically to this street. But it's also good to know, does that mean that the funds that had been set aside for something else, are they not going to be able to be used for that, since, this shouldn't impact another project, right, because of the grant funding? So I think just as far as staff capacity goes, is that still realistic? And you don't have to answer that right now. I'm just saying, in general, it would be good as these projects come to be able to say it is part of this longer 10-year plan. It's not, the street has been moved up and here's why, so that we can just better communicate that to the public.
Understood.
Thank you.
Yeah. As part of the Street Saver plan, our goal is to resurface or repave all streets over the life cycle of the streets. So at a higher level, yes, it is part of the plan. It just depends on how much forward we move certain streets up based on other infrastructure needs.
And then just as far as the timeline goes, what was the anticipated time frame for this again?
If council approves the item tonight, I'll defer to David to kind of talk about general timelines when we anticipate starting.
Okay, so should council approve this item, staff plans to issue the notice to proceed to the contractor late April, which means construction will probably start in May. Again, we're aiming for completion of the project by August because of the grant deadline, so we are on a sort of a fast track.
Okay, great to hear. Thank you.
And then we're going to go to Councilmember Salazar. Just on that question, with Lamita Park School, are we trying to coordinate that so maybe they're not in session or during a period of time so it lessens the traffic and the potential problem?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, that is a great point. Those are points of discussions that we have after we receive council award and we have pre-construction meetings with the contractor. Our goal is to try to minimize that as much as possible. Obviously, this project is a little more challenging just because of the grant deadlines. So depending on the order of operation of work that needs to be done, it may potentially conflict with school, but our hope is to not have that be the case.
Thank you. Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. I share some of Councilmember Medina's concerns around speed. So I'm glad to hear that there's going to be some of those feedback mechanisms put in place. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So hopefully they'll have an impact here. I sometimes run down that street, and I have to, if I'm on the side of the street that has no sidewalk, I'm in the street, and I know cars do tend to come. Sometimes dodging the potholes so they can maintain their speed. So it would be nice if we can do something to control that. I heard staff say that if there are complaints from the neighbors that we could look at other, other systems to control the speed. I was wondering, is that necessarily only residents that can issue a complaint, or could it be cyclists that use the track? Would they also be entitled to initiate that investigation?
So generally, typically, I'll let David talk a little more about it, but in general terms, you generally want the residents in that street or that neighborhood to want the traffic calming device measure. You don't want someone else saying it's going too fast and they put a speed bump right in your street and you run over that speed bump every day. So that, in general terms, that's what it is. I'm going to let David talk a little bit more in specifics about our program. David, can you chime in?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so in general terms, that is correct. I was just reminded by my colleagues that I believe Huntington Avenue and San Antonio Avenue is a collector roadway, which precludes it from participating in traffic calming program. I will say that every 5 to 7 years, the city has a citywide speed survey where we have someone do LiDAR so that police can enforce speed limits throughout the city. And as part of that, Huntington and San Antonio will be done, and we'll know kind of what the 85 percentile is and whether or not people are speeding on that street. And should they speeding, we'll certainly have traffic look into what might be some potential solutions.
Okay. And to add to what David is saying, generally the theory behind it is sometimes when you make roadways either class 3 or class 1, and there's more cyclists on the roadway, that sometimes helps with the speed as well, because people come to expect that is a bicycle corridor. And so sometimes that helps. All these measures that we talk about, like you said, Councilmember Salazar, it might work, it might not. We hope that it does, but we know that those are the tools that we use. And it's all to just make sure we have kind of a livable community. And so the hope is that this bike corridor will be just that, because it does connect from Millbrae in the south, and we're going to be extending further north with the other project. And it is part of the bicycle plan. That's truly the vision, right, to make a corridor that's north-south on the east side of town.
Okay. And my second question was around the durability of the thermoplastic that's being used for this. It's going to be in the roadway and exposed to vehicle traffic, truck traffic. How long do we expect it to last, and are we putting a plan in place to rehabilitate it periodically?
So Go ahead, dude.
Thermoplastic typically has a life of 5 to 7 years. We will be placing it so that outside of driveways to kind of minimize vehicular traffic. So as much as possible, we're going to try to keep it outside the wheel paths and any vehicles to kind of extend the life of that thermoplastic marking.
Yeah, in the illustration that we saw in the presentation, it said it would be placed in the center of the roadway, so it would be pretty much right in the middle of the street, not toward the curb.
I think it was not clear. It's actually the center of the travel way, so a travel lane. Okay. So it would keep it outside the wheel path. In terms of striping technology, there's either paint or thermoplastic, and thermoplastic is, of course, the more durable item, and so that's what we're putting out there. Obviously, there is a maintenance aspect to it. The hope is for us to, as we install new infrastructure, maintenance is always the challenge, right? We install more capital infrastructure, and so we're looking at ways of how we can look at that corridor. This is one of, I believe, one of the first new Class 3 bike corridors on a collector road, and so we'll be evaluating that as after installation to see, what our maintenance cycle should be.
Okay, and finally, along those same lines, are we going to be monitoring the bicycle traffic on the lane to see what kind of return we're getting on the investment, and if it's going to be heavily used?
I will defer to David if there's any counts or the LiDAR, radar stuff tracks things like that. That's
certainly something that we should probably consider. It wasn't something that we accounted for right now, but I think in general, I think that would be good practice.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
First, I want to say, I'm very pleased this project is going forward and that it's being fast-tracked. This is a key component to making that bike bridge make its way all the way through San Bruno. So I'm very pleased to see this. I just want to make one clarification on a statement made earlier regarding Huntington being a collector and then therefore it can't participate in traffic calming programs. I want to clarify that because I don't think that entire statement is necessarily true, because it definitely precludes speed bumps, but it wouldn't preclude any traffic calming measures, because the bulb outs that were mentioned are traffic calming measures. Fade lines can be done, those types of things. I just wanted it to clarify that for folks who are watching, just in case they live on a collector like I do and think that nothing can ever be done for their traffic, because that's not true.
Thank you. Let's go to public comment for this item. Anybody who wishes to, if you could raise your virtual hand, our city clerk will bring you into the room.
Wipenski.
Good evening. First, I'd like to say I'm a bike rider, and I ride my bike quite a bit around town. But I don't know why we're spending $1.5 million for a bike path. I think it was Councilman Salazar asked the question, are we going to monitor how many people? Well, why didn't we think about how many people are going to use this before we're going to spend $1.5 million? I mean, was there a study done to say how many users there were, we think there was going to be? It sounds like that wasn't done, and we just asked for a bunch of money to pave it. Second thing is, on this street, if there's a speed problem, why did we pick this street to put bicyclists on? That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe we should have picked a street that wasn't going to be a problem where we could have accidents. And the thing is, why doesn't it go the full length of San Bruno? Are we doing the train to nowhere, where we're building a bike path here and then we're going to spread it out later with future grants? I think the plan is not very good, and I think it's kind of a waste of money because, like I said, I ride my bike all around. You follow the rules, and you really don't need a bike path. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
I see no other hands raised.
Thank you. resident was asking a question just as far as why this was selected, or did we do any kind of survey per se on the usage by bicyclists? Is there any, Mr. Lee or John?
Yeah, thank you to the resident. So as we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, this was part of the walk and bike plan, which was adopted by council in 2016. Those particular questions are asked in the plan as we choose those corridors. Sometimes you choose corridors because there is a north-south street that can go straight through for a bicyclist. That would be a residential street. Sometimes that's not the case, and it would have to be a collector. I myself am a bicyclist. I commute to work by bike sometimes, and so I'm well aware of the business of streets. The Class 3 bikeway is to try to make the bike corridor a usable space for all rider levels. There are some people that ride bikes every day and they can go on a clear street without a bike lane. But I know that, say, the 10-year-old child might not be comfortable with the dad on a Sunday morning riding that bike. And we're really trying to create that. And so if you think about the bicycling itself, the more bicyclists, the more facilities you can create for bicyclists and opportunities for them to bike, and they will choose that as an alternative option than driving. And so that's part of the goal of the bike plan. Although this project particularly stops at that particular area, we do have another project that connects all the way up into Huntington as a cycle track. And so this bike route itself is not something that the city of San Bruno is saying funding 100%. We did receive grant funding to do it, so there is regional significance for this bike corridor, and so that's why as part of our bike plan and the grant, we felt that this was a good viable project that also connected the rest of Huntington cycle track that will be installed at a later date.
Thank you, Director. This road, this stretch of San Antonio has been in need, and I'm sure once the construction is done, it will be appreciated. So I'm glad for that. So is there any action? This is a resolution. Any action by council?
Through the chair, I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion seconded. Salazar Medina. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item B, City Clerk.
Adopt resolution approving the design, authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Golden Bay Construction, Inc. for the Spyglass Drive Storm Drain Improvement Project in an amount not to exceed $805,310.25, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Tanner Pacific, Inc. for construction management and inspection services in an amount not to exceed $99,254, approving an agreement amendment with Freyer and Loretta for grant support services for $15,000, approving a construction contingency of $120,800, and approving a total project budget in the amount of $1,455,000.
Thank you, City Clerk. Now we will turn over for the presentation to the Deputy Director, Ewan Ritchie.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I will share my screen now for the presentation. Oops, I don't know why my screen is frozen. Oh, there we go. A bit of a glitch there. So yes, thank you. Tonight, the item I have before you is the request to award a construction award of the Spyglass Drive Storm Drain Improvements project. This slide shows the agenda for the presentation. We'll start with the background, then scope, funding information, staff recommendation, and finally concluding with responding to questions by council. With some background, Spyglass shown is on the northwest portion of San Bruno. It is bordering the city of Pacifica. Sharp Park Road and the upstream watershed flows. So Sharp Park Road, as well as the southern portion of the residential area south of Sharp Park, flows north through Spyglass, and then there is a drainage system behind the homes on the north side of Spyglass that during intense storm events, properties on Spyglass Drive have flooded, and this project aims to reduce the risk of storm-related flooding on Spyglass Drive. And so I wanted to give a brief overview on just the 101 watershed. And so the way we can think about it is if you have a drop of water that falls as precipitation, depending on which side of a crest that this drop falls, it can fall on one side of the watershed, or if on this side, by gravity, it would fall on this side of the watershed. So this is just, pictorial of what sample watershed could be. It can be composed of, various types of uses. We have an urban area here, farm. So this is not, specific to San Bruno, but just in general. And as a drop of water falls on vegetated area, some of that water will infiltrate and percolate into the ground and groundwater. Some will run off. If it's more urbanized and there's structures with roof and paving and concrete, then that rainwater is less likely to infiltrate. There may be lawns, but that will run off into the storm drain system. So in the case of Spyglass Drive, we'll go back. In the case of Spyglass Drive, Sharp Park Road in the area south flow through Spyglass, their existing storm drain system. So the scope of the project includes replacement and upsize the storm drain pipe, and I will on the next slide show a generalized overview of where these areas are. Includes also repair and cure in place, installing new storm drain pipe, and restoring the trench. And so here again is Spyglass Drive. We have north is up, and let's see, Spyglass Drive is this street here. So first is to upsize pipe. So this pipe size is currently a 27-inch pipe, and that will be replaced with a 42-inch outer diameter pipe. The amount of this work is approximately 160 linear feet. Repair and cure in place, about 150 lineal feet. There is already large size pipe existing at this location, and this area will be, any offsets will be repaired, and then any connections that may have occurred in its history will be isolated, and the pipe will be cured in place. And on the top right is an example of what the before and after of the pipe would look like. And then we have new pipe installation, and as I mentioned, any potential connections from private systems or otherwise will be separated and isolated and will now flow into the separate system. There's currently not a storm drain system, it's all surface flow, but there is some private valley gutter and inlets, and so those will be gathered into this pipe within an easement. The private system is not within an easement, but the pipe will be installed in an easement and then flow downhill through Spyglass Drive. And it also, there is existing system through an easement here as well, across from Pacific Heights, and so the line will connect to that system and flow again to the system that's running behind the north, the homes on the north side of Spyglass. Yep. So the project was initiated with an appropriation of $370,000 for design in the fiscal year 2019. Staff at that time before that, staff had applied for a Cal OES FEMA hazard mitigation grant. The application was first submitted in 2017, and through the course of, as you can see, 4 years, when it was finally awarded in 2021, the representatives have turned over in Cal OES, and so there are multiple iterations of questions to the designer, to the city, and so after the designs had commenced, there were additional questions from FEMA that had not originally been as part of their Brian Lorda's agreement, but they did help us with the multiple rounds of questions that Cal OES had for the city. So we did eventually, fortunately, receive a grant. The total eligible expenses were approximately $1.6 million. Of that, Cal OES would provide $1.2 million in grants. The 25% local match is required, and so 25% on that $1.6 million is approximately $400,000. So there were favorable bid results when we opened the bids, and the total project costs are closer to $1.455 million. So the grant is anticipated to contribute at 75% about $1,090,000, and so 25% local match of that would be approximately $365,000. And so as you can tell with the appropriation that was already granted by council for the design, that pretty much at this time pretty much matches our grant local match. And so at this time we are not requesting any additional appropriations for this project to move forward to construction. We do have contingency on the project, and so if for whatever reason something really unanticipated, which we are knocking on wood that we've done the design, that should not happen. But if that were to happen and we needed to utilize additional grant and we needed more additional local match, we would come back to council at that time. But we are not anticipating that to occur. And so given the overall funding, I believe it's favorable. So the recommendation from staff tonight are adopting a resolution to approve the design, authorize the city manager to execute construction contract with Golden Bay Construction for the Spyglass Storm Drain Improvements project in an amount not to exceed $805,310.25. Approving a construction management inspection agreement with Tanner Pacific in an amount not to exceed $99,254, and this is for construction management and inspection. Approving an amendment with Brian Loretta for the grant support services they provided in an amount not to exceed $15,000. Approving a construction contingency of $120,800, and approving a total project budget amount of $1,455,000. And staff is available to respond to any comments. Questions.
Or both. Thank you very much for your presentation and report. Again, the grant funding is always nice, and I appreciate that. It shows, things move slow, but we don't give up, and so congratulations on that. First, we'll open it up to our two colleagues, and then we'll see if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak. Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you very much. I remember when we first heard about this as the council, and it was like, wow, one more thing in our stormwater system that we need to fix. And I am deeply appreciative of the efforts to get the grants. I mean, those are significant. I was wondering if you could quickly go back to the overall plan of what is being replaced. Just quickly, I just wanted to see that one more time. And I'm guessing that this, back in the day, when they built that in the 50s or the 60s, it was thought, no problem, don't put any pipes in the ground, let's just put the houses in, and it's going to be good. All right, so a portion of that is repair and cure in place, and then you upsize the out of the pipe. Okay. And of course, the residents will be notified and all this, and it's going to be, it'll take a while for them to do that. So thank you for that. I'm in support of this project. I do have a question for staff regarding just the status of our stormwater enterprise fund of taking the hit, and I think this is lower than we might have been thinking that it would be, especially getting the grant. So just wanted to see how that affects our balance there. And it's just another, fortunately this one we were able to get some money for it, but I'll leave it at that for now. So thank you very much.
And why don't we go to the Vice Mayor, then we'll come back to staff.
Okay, thank you for your work on this. I guess I wanted to ask, similar to my previous questions, in the staff report there's a reference to the 2014 master plan. And so I just wanted to ask about why this project as opposed to the others that were mentioned in the master plan.
Yes, and so the master plan really looks at the trunk system, and so this particular location is an isolated location. It does flood, but it does not aim to necessarily model the entire system. It mainly models the trunk system, and so as these particular locations are identified, the needs are recognized, but this with separate recognition and effort outside of the master plan itself.
Yeah, and just to add to Deputy Director Ritchie's response, we receive FEMA funds due to some of the flooding that occurred in the area.
Mr. Mayor, couldn't hear all that. It kind of got chopped up a little bit.
It did.
Sounded like it was important.
Director Lee, you froze a little bit, so that's what council members referenced.
Through the mayor, I can reply.
Okay, City Manager.
Yeah. I believe what Director Lee was going to say is that we have received a number of complaints from this neighborhood about flooding that occurs. The council may remember in 2019, former Director Jimmy Tan would show a video of flooding in this particular neighborhood. And the flooding is typically so severe that we, for the last several years, have been sandbagging one neighbor's home every winter, and now I think we're sandbagging two homes every winter just to prevent from flooding. And I do know that there is one property on Spyglass that has flooded twice, both involving insurance claims that thankfully did not involve the city those times, but largely due to the pooling of stormwater and the deficiency of the system in this area.
Okay, so I think I guess I'm trying to figure out, so this, because in the it says that this area was excluded from the master plan. So I'm going to support this item tonight. I'm just trying to figure out, or is this taking the place of something else that's in the master plan as far as funding goes? What does that mean, that it's not part of the master plan and that we're being asked now to approve it as opposed to what's already listed in the master plan as what we need to focus on?
Let me ask if the City Manager could help us in response, please.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Mayor Mason. It's important to note that the master plan does not look at the entirety of the stormwater system. It really looks at the backbone pipes of the system. And so when we provided previous presentations on the master plan, a few of the statements that have been made of, for example, the $30 million in projects that was identified in the master plan, I believe, in 2017. That's sort of the known. There are still known unknowns, which are improvements that are needed to some of the residential stormwater streets of which this would apply. This project was advanced in particular because of the flooding that occurs at this pinch point in our stormwater system, because we had a home that has flooded twice because we currently sandbag at this point 2 homes every winter to prevent flooding, because we know that this is a deficiency in the residential portion of the stormwater system. And so that's why this project was advanced, and a grant was applied for, and the local match is approximately 375,000 total project, just under 1.5. And so it is a critical need, but there are projects that are not included in the master plan. That are not included in the master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see if there's anybody from the public who would like to have any questions or comments on this item. I am not seeing any at this time, so we'll bring it back to council for further discussion and or action.
Through the mayor, I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution. I'll second that.
Motion seconded. Hamilton Medina. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason?
Aye.
Mayor Medina?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you to Public Works staff for your presentations and time this evening. We'll now move on to item 9, comments from council members. First item, Vice Mayor Linda Mason, request informational presentation by third-party contractor providing building inspection services to the city of San Bruno on the inspection process required to open a business and how the city is assisting in these efforts. Vice Mayor.
Great, thank you. So I had to do a little bit of digging in our old meetings, but in March of 2021, an RFP was issued to provide expertise in public works, building, and planning for on-call development services and a couple of other items within the realm. 12 proposals were submitted in response, and staff identified that 7 met the needs of the RFP. On January 25th, 2022, the council, we all approved a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with West Coast Code Consultants in an amount not to exceed $250,000 to perform as needed professional services. At the time, it was not clear that these professional services would include providing inspections to downtown businesses that were opening. Since then, it has been made clear that West Coast Code Consultants are providing building inspection services downtown to essentially fill in for needs of staffing shortages that we've been having. Since January, I've heard a number of complaints of the onerous process business owners are going through to pass building inspections. While this has been consistent prior to January, it was believed that the additional assistance from the third party professional services would improve the process and efficiency where we were at capacity with in-house staff and staff transitions. Since this is not what at least I'm hearing, and I believe fellow council members are hearing as well, an understanding of the process, I think, would really benefit the council to be able to respond to owners and constituents that are contacting us. We don't have an overwhelming number of vendors opening businesses, and I'm really hopeful that the contractor of the city of San Bruno would provide this presentation, hopefully at no cost to the city, just because it's really just giving us an overview of what services are being provided that the city's paying for. But because it includes anything from behind the counter services, so your first contact with the city as a business owner, all the way up to the actual inspections, if what we're hearing is that they're not resulting in expedited or enhanced services for small business owners, then I think we just need to better understand where we are and how we can respond to those and what our options are, right, as a council. So this is a request to ask the existing third-party contract that we selected, West Coast Code Consultants, to provide a walkthrough of their process, what it takes to open the business, how the city complements the third party. So is there assistance needed from the city, or vice versa? Is there additional assistance that's being provided that maybe we don't know about and we're not hearing about? But this request is solely for the third party, knowing that the city staff right now is at capacity. So just to be more specific, council would be enhanced by knowing the process from the time the permit is submitted for approval. What is the timeline? What's the average time frame it takes? How many inspections are conducted on average prior to a business opening? and how efficient are the inspections. So for example, our inspectors going back 3 and 4 times, identifying items that were visible in the first or second inspection. How often does this happen, and does the city have to pay for those return visits each time? Secondly is what assistance and education is provided to business owners at the counter from the third party to place owners in the best position to know exactly what they need to do, and assuming they follow the instructions, really be streamlined to open as soon as possible and essentially set them up to succeed from the beginning. So this is, we would direct staff obviously to contact the third party on the council's behalf and really lay out the scope. But I think it would be educational and beneficial for the council to know, what's happening with some of these businesses, know that we have a position, hopefully eventually that's going to be opening up around community development. But I think without understanding the process, we're in a weaker position to make decisions moving forward on these contracts and also be able to best assist our small businesses. So thank you for entertaining this request.
Thank you. Questions to the Vice Mayor or for clarification? Councilmember Medina.
Sure. This is one of the things that the Downtown Improvement Committee was kind of doing. We interview those that are willing, business owners, to ask them after they open their business, how was the experience? And we have not yet reported back. I think this is timely. It may be stretching out, and I'd like to hear the city manager's response. The idea of how we could make it easier and to assist small business owners to open in our downtown, and there's a lot of problems with that. And my observation from being on the council and also being a former employee here is that when you have an old downtown and you have these old buildings, that as you try to start peeling away layers of walls, you're finding things that you didn't know were appropriate or that were installed correctly. So there's something with that, but nonetheless, I do want to hear from our city manager, because we not only have Tom and I interviewed a handful of businesses that open, but of some of those businesses that are currently trying to open, and that information has been passed along to the city manager and to the community development department. But it's a pretty complicated endeavor to open a new business in an old building. But I'll refrain from commenting further until we hear back from our city manager.
Councilmember Hamilton, do you mind if we pause on you? Okay, thank you. City Manager.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Medina, members of the City Council, and Vice Mayor Mason. It's important to note that the third-party contract that is being referenced, WC3, does provide a number of services to our Community and Economic Development Department, both counter support, building inspection, and building inspection support in particular, which are the services that were mentioned. They are a supplement. They do not provide the full totality of counter services or inspection services. And so I'm familiar with a few of the incidences where we have received some complaints. I'm also aware of a number of instances where customers were served well and thank the city. I think the request to have the third-party contractor come to the city council and provide a presentation on how they support businesses and what was articulated was actually more of the overall process of how the city supports businesses. And I just want to highlight that this consultant only provides one piece of the service. And so what I'm interpreting the ask of is for the city council to have a presentation on how the city supports businesses, both at the counter and inspections, and how the city supports businesses to open in San Bruno. If that's the intent, it's a much larger presentation. It certainly involves staff because, again, this consultant provides one piece as a supplement to what we do, and they are not knowledgeable on all facets of how the city supports businesses. In addition, we've had a number of conversations during budget time and in other conversations about the city's need for economic development. I remember saying to the city council when I took this job a little bit over 3.5 years ago that there's an entire department missing in the city, and that's called economic development. At that time, the community services, the community and economic development department was called community services. And to this day, there is not one single position in this city that is dedicated full-time to economic development. What the city council has done in recognition of that is that you have funded an economic development manager position that we have been recruiting for and have had actually 2 candidates back out of the process for various reasons, but we all know of the cost of living in the peninsula and the difficulty to attract employees, not just for San Bruno, but for other cities. So that continues to be a hard-to-fill position. And certainly I am the first to admit that we need to help our businesses more, in particular our small and medium-sized businesses, and help businesses open not only downtown but elsewhere in San Bruno. That is a multifaceted and multi-pronged conversation, and I think the request to have one contractor that supports us in that process may not provide the city council with the full complement of information that you would need to truly assess the process. Now, if there's a desire to have that conversation, as a city manager, what I would request is allow me to work with staff to find the appropriate time for that work to be done and to be brought to you. But certainly, if there's a request to have WC3 come to the city council and provide a report on the, in particular, services that they provide for us, I'm sure that can be done. But just know that it will be a very narrowly tailored presentation because they do not fully encompass everything we do to support businesses, and they provide backup when we have staff vacancies, and they also provide supplemental inspection services because we know in development services right now the need far exceeds our capacity, and so we have supplemented our staff as cities do with contractors so we can meet the need of the development community, both small, medium, and large.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Councilmember Hamilton.
So so part of getting more information about this process, just because of everything that we've heard here, Councilmember Medina outlined most of what I was going to say. It's important to note that when a business owner has trouble getting through getting through and getting open, sometimes it's because they're not following the directions. That happens, but we are seeing examples where they're doing everything that they're being told, and the goalposts in their mind, in their view, seem to be moving. And those are the areas where I really think that we need to focus and make improvements. And it would be beneficial, at least to me, to understand, how if I was to go open a new business, how do I know what I need to do? Is there a checklist? Is there a list of things that is provided that's clear? And then, obviously, as was stated earlier, there's a lot of old buildings here that checklist can't possibly cover everything, and so there's got to be stuff that comes up on that first inspection that may end up being a surprise. But another area where I think that we need to really focus is to make sure that between the first inspection and the second inspection, that first inspection was complete, because we are hearing, that when the
the inspector comes back for the second inspection. Sometimes it's not even the same it's not the same person, which is, that happens for staffing or whatever. But during the second inspection, something that could have been identified in the first inspection is then identified, and now that's adding more time. And we have to keep in mind that in many cases these small businesses are, they're in all cases they're paying rent. They have to maintain their utilities and the rent and everything while they're trying to get open, and they're getting no revenue because they can't open yet. So I'm absolutely in favor of finding out more. I understand what the city manager just articulated, that we won't get the whole picture if it's just a presentation from WC3, and that's I understand that. But if that can be supplemented with whatever work that would be needed from staff in order just to give us a good picture of what process looks like, I would be supportive of that.
Any other comments from colleagues or questions? Okay. Seeing Vice Mayor?
I was just going to say I'm okay with the narrowed request. I don't want to expose staff to additional work, but I would be interested in narrowed request.
Yeah, the narrowed. I would like to take the city manager's recommendation of the narrowed request, understanding getting that together at a time that's suitable. In addition, I agree with the city manager that, again, I know we were saying San Mateo Avenue, but it should be for all businesses in the city of San Bruno. They're all important. Everybody matters here. And so I would like it to be very and inclusive, because I'm sure others, where Don Pico's was, maybe that's why, it's taken a while. I don't know, but I figure, Councilmember Hamilton, I think you hit it perfectly when you say it's like peeling the onion. So you're going into an establishment and you're saying, oh, this should be relatively easy to bring it back up to speed to open a new business. And sometimes it just lends into so many other things. So thank you. Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the reminder. And we are the Downtown Improvement Committee, but we have spoken to owners in Town Center, the KT Toast, I think that's what it was, a fantastic spot, had no problems whatsoever. So thank you for that. And after hearing from most of my colleagues, I think a short presentation would be fine, but it's really the larger thing is that we don't have staff to assist, to do that additional amount of assistance, maybe a little handholding to walk these new business owners through the process. So I'm fine with moving ahead with the limited scope, and I'm sure we'll have to address the staffing situation, being that we've been trying to get this the higher level, and how else can we move forward, and looking at that during our budget. We're kind of getting out of phase here, but it's noted that there has been a number of issues. So I'm in favor of moving forward with the smaller version of the presentation.
City Manager is at the podium. I'd like to call on him, and then we'll go to the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I think my question has just been answered, but I stood up again just to ask for a clear definition of what a narrowly tailored presentation is, because I've been at this for a while, and I know that when someone stands in front of the City Council, the questions can go broad, right? And if we're asking for a vendor to come and present to the City Council on their work, I think that it should be narrowly tailored, and we can provide the City Council ahead of time with the scope of work of the services they provide. But again, I just want to highlight that what we're really talking about here is an economic development program and having an ombudsman to really shepherd our small and local businesses through the process, which is the city council has mentioned before, staff wholeheartedly agrees with, and you have provided funding for a position that we have yet to hire to develop that program. And so I know that there are frustrations because we do not, as a city, have an economic development program. One of the first things I did was retitle the department to put economic development in their title, and me and the director will serve that economic development purpose for the city, but we are missing it on the small and local businesses, and we need that ombudsman. Absolutely 110%. That's why we adopted the position. And I just want to make sure that what you mean by narrowly tailored presentation is that we will invite a vendor that provides services to the council to present on the services that they provide and answer questions specifically on those services. Know that that will not give you the larger complement of how the city supports businesses and all the various steps a business might go through. And if at that meeting there will be questions and you will want staff to get up and respond to, know that that's going to require work, right? And you know, it's my duty to have the conversations with staff and make sure that we're prepared for those questions. And so I'm saying this because the narrow presentation on the dais can become that broad presentation because there are going to be questions that this consultant can't answer. And what I hear council saying is you want a narrow presentation, and that's what we will provide. And I just want to be clear about exactly what that is.
I appreciate you stepping to the podium and asking and making sure that we're all on the same page. I appreciate that. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I think for narrow presentation is really how are they assisting small business owners, and by all means that includes the rest of the city, but I've received 3 complaints now, and considering there's not that many businesses opening in downtown, I thought 3 was a lot. I mean, there's maybe 3 businesses opening. So I'd be interested in them coming in, talking about what their experience has been in San Bruno thus far as it pertains to small businesses. And while I do agree that ideally we'll have an economic development person, I also think that people at the counter, whom I believe that this third-party contractor is also providing counter services, can very easily say this is, you know, the standard, right? This is what is expected of you, and this is what the process looks like, and we're going to help you along that process. I don't think you need a third party. I mean, I don't think you need a staff member to do that. You know, if that makes sense. I should say, I don't think you need a new position to do that. I support the new position, but until we get that position, I am very curious to know what our third party is providing and what services they're providing to our small businesses that are opening.
Councilman Hamilton.
So the Vice Mayor said most of what I was going to say. The key pieces of it are things that if the consultants are being backups at the counter and are out doing the inspections, the key things for me as part of this presentation should be things that they should be able to do, which is how do we inform a new applicant of all the things that they need to do? What is that checklist or whatever it is? I would hope they know what it is because they're manning the counter, as backups, and if a new applicant comes up, they of course need to tell them something. So I would hope that they know that. And then the second thing would be how do we ensure that what standards are in place to make sure that the inspection process is thorough, especially on that first inspection, and consistent, so that if a different inspector comes back for the second inspection, they're not finding stuff that the first inspector missed. And because they're out doing the inspections, the contractor should know how to answer that question as well. Those are the 2 biggest things for me.
City Manager, just want to circle back. I know you've heard us all, but I don't. Does that assist you at all as far as the scope, or do we need to help out and get on the same page possibly?
We can certainly provide that guidance and invite the contractor to provide a presentation on that. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, because I think also what we're asking is, well, okay, if they're contracted, which they have a contract, and they're due A to M, whatever it is, And now we're asking, so how are they going and walking the business owner through various elements? I know I've heard from, not this contractor, but sometimes somebody comes to the counter and maybe they don't convey everything that they're wishing to do within the business. And so then they come back to the counter and are frustrated, but then there were elements that were left out. So I think I think we're asking kind of a little bit of saying, but tell us what you've heard, tell us what you feel, you do this elsewhere, and, how's it going? I think that's what we're seeming to want. What, is what I'm kind of sensing from council, kind of that.
Mr. Mayor, I would agree with that, but candidly, what I'm also hearing is that we've heard complaints, and so we want the contractor to come and explain their process. And so it feels a little bit like we've heard complaints about a specific contractor's work, and we would like that contractor to come to the city council and articulate. And I think that there's a challenge with that, because if we're going to talk specifics, there are many, many nuances around particular instances. And I don't think that the appropriate space for that should be a contractor presenting in public to the city council about specific instances. And so what I've heard is the desire for a general presentation on the work the contractor does and how they support businesses that come to the counter and how they address inspections. The contractor can do that. The only point that I was making is that it should be very narrowly tailored on the work that they do, and not go into any specifics on any particular complaint or project that they may have inspected.
And thank you. I think you articulated that well, and I would agree. We're not to get into specifics in a certain person's business or this or that. I mean, that's not appropriate to be airing that. That's we have to respect everyone's right and privacy, etc. So the way you articulated it, City Manager, that's what I envision. My other colleagues can say yes or no, or I have a yes from Mr. Hamilton. That's 2. I have a yes. Yes. Okay. So yes, just how you last articulated it. Yes, please. Then Vice Mayor Mason, any other items that you want to share or express under council comments tonight?
Yeah, just a couple of quick updates. I'll get all mine out right now, but I just want to say that this past weekend I was invited I had actually been invited a few months ago to attend a show which I attended this past weekend called Dear San Francisco. It's really a love letter to San Francisco with a group of people, but little did I know that we'd be a group of all San Bruno residents in awe of this amazing show. What was really neat about the show is that one of the performers, actually one of the stars in the show, who had also starred in Cirque du Soleil, is a San Bruno native and resident who came out, and her name is Maya Kesselman, and she was just phenomenal. I mean, I can't even express how amazing this show was. And so anyway, I wanted to thank staff and the mayor for preparing an acknowledgement and a certificate that I was able to present to her. And I just wanted to recommend, if you haven't seen it, see it, because it's not only neat to see, what the human body can do, but it's also really neat to see a fellow resident up there, and really to see somebody that's so talented and amazing, making and living their dream. So highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. I also wanted just to thank staff for flying the Ukrainian flag as a follow-up to our last meeting. I saw it, and I still continue to hope for peace. And then lastly, I just wanted to take a moment to thank our Assistant City Manager, Jennifer Brazil, who's going to be departing from the city family. And she has just been, as if we're in the same room, but have been instrumental in reviewing and applying our city's policies, our procedures. You've truly enhanced the Human Resources Department, and I think that your presence within San Bruno has been very, I would say, even though not evident because you do not speak as much as I do. But I will say we have seen the results. I've seen you provide support to the senior team. You've engaged wholeheartedly in negotiations with an employee-first mentality, and you've really guided the city with the consistently changing rules throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, which is probably one of the most challenging times in history to be not just in HR, but leading a city team. So I just wanted to really thank you, and I'm sure we all thank you. But we, especially now for your public service, and wish you well in your future endeavors. So thank you so much. I can't clap too loud because the kids are asleep.
Other comments from council members? I almost forgot your last name. Councilmember Medina.
Yeah, that's a good one. A few things. The first thing is Second Harvest is tomorrow at Bel Air from 1:45 to 4 o'clock, where at least 200 families will be receiving groceries. Also, and Bel Air's at 350 3rd Avenue. Also tomorrow, the weekly distribution at Skyline, where 1,000 families get food every week. That starts at 11 o'clock. The lines can get pretty long there, so plan accordingly. I received an email, I think that was yesterday, about how it's grand opening day at Laura Field on this Saturday. The Braves, who are champions of the Pee-wees, they did beat us, and they are playing the Hawks. The parade is at 11 o'clock. The game is at 2 o'clock. And I mean, I love baseball, but there's something even more special about San Bruno baseball. And, the little ones in their little uniforms, I mean, it's like my son is already 9 now, and those times are lost as growing up. So I encourage you, if you can make it, it's a wonderful experience. They will have the snack bar open that was renovated by the Lions and the San Bruno Community Foundation funding. And so I think, we're starting to see that things are hopefully getting back to normal, and nothing's more normal than getting a hot dog and watching baseball. So I encourage you all to attend this Saturday. Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Come off of mute and do my standard background plug. Hang on a moment. There we go. So I wanted to invite everyone to this Saturday in our downtown. San Bruno Life, who is Karen Cunningham, has organized the Downtown San Bruno Stroll, where 40 businesses are participating. You start at the Grand Leader and pick up your ticket, and then we're going to do a long walk up down the avenue and back up again, ending at Atlas Pizza Lounge and stopping at businesses along the way. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a great way to come out and support our local businesses and learn about what great businesses we have downtown. So encourage everybody to come out. This is it's starting at 1 o'clock at Grand Leader Market in downtown San Bruno. And I'd also like to just very quickly say thank you to our Assistant City Manager, Dr. Brazil. My comments would never be nearly as eloquent as our Vice Mayor, so I will just simply say thank you for your patience and dedication to our city, and I wish you all the best on your next chapter. Thank you.
Any other comments from council members? I'll go ahead. Councilmember Medina already hit on the youth baseball, and yes, it's nice to have it back. I had gone to the girls softball league opener, and equally as exciting and enthusiastic to see all the players. And actually Artichoke Joe's, who sponsored the entire the uniforms and sponsored all the teams this year. And also, I believe, donating something to over in the baseball, Marty would know better, at Bel Air Lions Field. So I think that's great, but it is nice to see that and the excitement of that happening again. Also, this Friday, I'll be meeting with the state senator and some other folks, and this will be a roundtable. This is to try to look toward a state level as far as funding for grade separations. As we know, the grade separation at San Bruno was almost all paid for by others than the city of San Bruno. However, now they're $300 million, and usually you get maybe half. You can get some for funding. So the state senator and I were talking about that, and as you know, we have something in South City and San Bruno if there's opportunities for us. So I will be embarking upon that with him, and certainly can tell the San Bruno story, how it makes a huge difference for safety and for residents and travelers. And then also to the assistant city manager, wish you the very best, safe travels. Thank you for your time here. I know maybe it's not as long as we had wished, but at the same time, I think your care and your concern and your compassion through that time, trying to bring things up and policies revisited, because as you know, things go along a process and they keep going, and sometimes we don't pause to reflect back to say, you know, where do we need to go? And as was alluded earlier, the COVID, at any time for anyone in assistant city manager, HR, to embark upon that is something that, you know, you would have never thought coming in, and you got to negotiate contracts for the city too. So in the time you've been here, you've touched many things and improved upon the system, the process, and the policies. So my best wishes to you and your family and to your future. So with that, if there's nothing else, colleagues, we're going to go ahead and adjourn to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on April the 12th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Have a good night and have a good rest of the week.